Hold on one second. Can you hear my dog freaking out? Okay.
Just barely.
He stopped. Okay, so I need to hide this. How do I hide the, can you guys see like the list of people on the side?
No.
Oh, cool.
No, I just see the PowerPoint deck.
Cool. Then disregard. All right, so I am going to be talking about grammar and writing, mostly how to write in the context of blog posts. So the reason this is important is because normally when we're writing a blog post, we're writing to inform or persuade someone to think the way we do. And it's hard to do that if someone doesn't sound like they know what they're talking about, or if it looks like they don't understand how to write, they're just putting words on the screen, which I think in this social media age of like a 280 character limit is super common. But the way we get better at writing and seeming more confident at writing and just getting more confident at writing is just to write more. So I'm going to talk about punctuation, mostly the common punctuation that we use and is misused. You will see a lot of these little drawings because writing is hard to talk about without examples, and examples get kind of boring if it's just text. So the period, everybody knows how to use a period. The main thing that people don't do right is, or that I've noticed, not that most people don't do right, but that I have noticed is putting a period after the period and an abbreviation. So like when you use etc., putting 2 periods at the end, it is wrong. Commas is probably the one that most people have problems with, either overusing or underusing. Whenever you don't use a comma and you just have a sentence that's going on and on, that's called a run-on sentence. Whenever you have a comma in the middle of a sentence that doesn't make sense, like separating 2 complete thoughts, that's called a comma splice. And those are the things that most people tend to do is just either one of those. So a comma indicates a short pause. Just like I went to the store the other day and I bought some milk or whatever. There's a short little pause in there. That's what a comma indicates. So you'd use a comma after an introductory word in an argument, like when I went to the store, I bought milk. However, I also got hit by a car. Comma goes between however and getting hit by the car. And you would use it in the middle of a sentence to set off non-essential elements to the sentence, so stuff that can be omitted. And the sentence will still make sense if you get rid of that stuff. And then also to separate words in a series, and then near the end of a sentence to indicate a distinct pause. And that sort of thing is really good if you're trying to write with more of like a conversational flow, using commas strategically rather than over underusing them. The semicolon is another one that I get asked about. And the best way to think about a semicolon is it's a period on top of a comma. So it's a longer pause than a comma would provide, but it is a shorter, but it's not a dead stop like a period. So just think of it like, oh, if I want a pretty decent sized pause here, but I don't want to separate the thoughts completely, use a semicolon. And you can only use a semicolon really in a sentence to separate 2 independent clauses. And an independent clause, for people who don't know the, I guess, terminology of writing, is like 2 complete thoughts, 2 complete sentences, ideas that can hold on their own. I think I used one. Yeah, here. So a comma is like a ghost. Both have unfinished business. Both of those things can stand alone, but I didn't want them to, so you use a semicolon. And you can also think of a semicolon in some contexts as a super comma. So in this sentence, I've lived in Austin, Texas, Portland, Oregon, and Seattle, Washington. If I had just thrown commas in there, that would have been unintelligible. And you couldn't even determine what that sentence is trying to say. It would just look like a garbled mess. The apostrophe.
Whoa, I want to go back to that sentence.
Yeah.
So the appropriate place for those semicolons is after the city. I would have thought it was backwards.
Yeah, you would think that. But I couldn't tell you why that is, but in all the examples I've looked at, oh shit, no, you're right. I did that wrong.
Oh, okay. I was excited. I thought I was gonna learn something mind blowing.
Nope. That was a typo on my part. And you know what sucks is I tried really hard not to do that in a presentation about punctuation. So that's wrong. It's actually Austin, Texas, semicolon, blah, blah, blah. Good catch. But no, nothing mind-blowing. So apostrophes is another one, and mostly in the word it's that I see gets misused. It apostrophe is, or it apostrophe s is it is or it has. Like, it's a good movie. Without the apostrophe, it's just showing possession. But that is not one of the only scenarios, but one of the scenarios where an apostrophe doesn't show possession. Normally an apostrophe would be used to show possession, and also contractions. If you guys have any questions, I'm just reading through notes. Or if you have specific questions about any of these things, let me know. But where was I?
Contractions.
Thank you. Yeah, contractions, words that, you guys know what contractions are, but yeah, words that are normally separated, like cannot, can do, or can be contracted to can't, do not, don't. And then also you would use an apostrophe with common nouns that end with an S. They would get an apostrophe before the S, so like you normally see with its. I think the one that is the most confusing is when it's a plural noun. So like gorgons, if I'm talking about multiple gorgons, but I'm also talking about the possession of multiple gorgons. So the apostrophe would go after the S because that word ends in an S. And if it ends in an S, it gets the apostrophe afterwards.
I did not know that proper nouns had a different rule about this.
Me neither. That's really cool.
Really interesting.
Yeah. The ellipses, and this is the singular of ellipses with IS if you wanted to do plural ES, is used to omit information. It also shows hesitation, suspense, wavering, trailing thoughts. This one's mostly used like in those contexts when you want to just show suspense. You can use them to like put a pause in your sentence, and you can also use dashes for that. So in that example there,
I have a question.
Go ahead. I can't hear you, whoever is talking.
Can you go
I
back
hear
to
Charles, but barely.
Yeah, can you go back to the previous slide? Yeah, so
Yeah.
Is there a space between the ... and the V?
No, you don't put a space in between the ellipses.
Okay.
No,
And
that's
you
crazy.
capitalize, huh?
Yeah, I was about to ask that. Like the capital letters,
Oh, that was an error.
but no
Yeah.
space.
No
That's not-
space. So yeah, so when you use an ellipses, you don't put a space in between the words, but if you're using a dash, you would put spaces. It's you don't have to. That's really a stylistic thing, but most people put spaces in between the dashes.
Yeah, I think what I was taught in like typography is that if you're doing like an M dash, like I think that's what you have it here at in the I wonder if, oh never mind.
Mm-hmm.
I think that doesn't get a full space. It's just like a little bit of a space or something odd like that. But then if you're using like short in space dashes, then you do put spaces.
Where's the little space part?
So like normal spacing in most writing, like after a period, you would actually hit the spacebar twice, use 2 spaces. Which I think is that's where the difference is between a short space and a I guess regular space, normally using 2 spaces. That rule I've actually read a little bit about, and it's kind of a dead rule because people don't use it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But I don't know. That's also I hear a lot of people in older generations insisting that you need 2 spaces, but for the most part, I don't remember being taught the 2-space rule.
Emacs is actually really annoying in that way. Like when you're documenting Elicit code, it insists on 2 spaces.
Yeah. I mean, because that is the technically correct way to do it, but it's like whenever you come up with a slang term and then someone else uses that for a while and changes the meaning, that becomes the new meaning. Like if you're saying, not even a slang term, but if you say, oh, I got electrocuted, just to say you got shocked by an electrical socket. Well, electrocuted means that you got shocked and died. You have to die to be electrocuted. But we say it because we got shocked. So that changed the meaning of electrocuted. I mean, and the meaning is still the same as what it used to be, but I guess more of like a street speak meaning change.
Street speak is itself street speak, I think. So for dashes, I overuse the hell out of these, and I have a couple questions. So for one, like, should I be, since it's a long bar, I guess, should I be using a double hyphen character to do that now? Or
Yes. You would use a double hyphen for a dash.
okay, and that'll like this character that you have right here, though, that's like a ligature of some kind, or like a UTF-8 thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then earlier you were talking about using commas to offset like kind of extraneous pieces of a sentence that can be removed and the sentence still makes sense.
Yeah.
Like that's where I most often, like, it's unclear to me where to use commas for that, where to make that parenthetical, or like where to use dashes, because here you're having dashes like leading out into a shift, but like, you know, can you shift and shift back? Like, would you ever have like a kind of separate piece of a sentence, you know, extraneous piece, like offset by dashes in the middle? Because that's I feel like my major crime.
Yeah, you definitely can do that. Like in an example, I should have had a way to like write examples. Like, let me see. So I'll just write one in here. If you're saying like, John went to the store with his trusty dog and bought some candy. So here we have a context switch, just an abrupt change of thought. And this is more so like telling you that, hey, this is a sudden change. Like, this isn't important to the sentence at all, but it's more of like harsh and sudden. Like, John went to the store with his trusty dog and bought some candy. You don't have to say with his trusty dog because it's not important to the sentence. If you used it with commas, which you can, this would still be unimportant to the sentence, but it reads more like John went to the store with his trusty dog and bought some candy. It's more of like a softer way to say that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and then so parenthetical would be somewhere in the middle, I imagine.
Yeah.
Like, and if you, yeah, okay, thanks.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And then, so the main difference between dashes and hyphens, or not the main difference, but hyphens are shorter, and they're really only used to connect 2 or more words that express a single concept, and then also age. So scary looking is one concept because that thing looks scary. Normally 2 separate words. So now I'm going to get into like general tips for writing better. And one of the big ones is being confident, but also concise. So don't try to like sound smart by using words that you're not familiar with or phrases that you don't understand. If you're writing about something that you're learning about, it's important that you kind of show your knowledge, but don't show like your uncertainty. You can say things like, oh, I learned about this, blah, 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 but you would want to avoid saying, I think this is this way, or I believe this thing is this way. Because when you're saying, I think, it's like, well, whatever you're saying you're thinking about is no longer important. Like, I think it's this way, but I'm still going to have to go look it up to see if it is that way. Or saying I believe is also just unnecessary. Like, if you're writing about it, of course you believe in it, or you believe what you're writing. You also want to combine sentences that have the same meaning, which kind of goes into another point I'm going to make, but it shortens sentences, or it can lengthen sentences so that, you know, your reader stays interested with varied sentence lengths. If you write too much with like just short sentences or just lengthy sentences that people get lost in, you're going to lose the meaning and you're going to lose your audience. And then don't be redundant, and also don't use words that are just fluff. Like if you're trying to say, in this picture example, she was really, really mad, you can take out really, really mad and just say she was livid, because that's the same meaning. She was pissed. Yeah, cutting out buffer words is gonna just make you sound more confident too. Personally, I think that's how I read it. And then if you want to elicit emotion out of a reader, I think it's really important to, it is important to make the reader feel the pain of the problem that you're trying to solve. And like, I mean, really go into detail of the pain of whatever it is you're trying to solve. Because when you're writing a blog post, you're trying to solve something. So you want them to like get frustrated, like go through this story, like, man, I am mad at this. How do I fix it? And then you can do that by showing, one, examples, and then two, emphasis, pause, breath with the punctuation rules that we kind of went over. And then keep in mind your own emotions about the problem. Like, I feel this way and I want other people to feel this way, but don't necessarily let that guide your writing, because it's really easy to get really pissed about something and then just write angrily, which I think is another thing that we do a lot with like Twitter and Facebook and just these tiny short posts. And then general tips for like editing. Read your work out loud. If a sentence doesn't make sense to you, and then kind of what Joe is asking, if something seems unnecessary or you don't know what's unnecessary in a sentence, read it out loud how you would say it. And you'll like really get the idea of what is superfluous information or just how a sentence is written. And then if you can, always have someone proofread or edit your writing. It's always helpful to get another set of eyes. Even if they're not like great at writing, it's still important for someone to read it and see if they can at least get the meaning or anything like that. And if you do stylistic things like, I don't know, having mostly double quotes instead of single quotes for non-specific quotes, like you're not quoting someone, but you're just making a quote, you can use double or single quotes for that. Be consistent with whatever you do stylistically. That way it doesn't look like you're just hacking up a post. And then I know someone wanted to talk about sentence structure. Sentence structure is really hard to talk about in like just a lunch and learn, but because you have to go through like down there predicates, subjects, participles, and those are just so boring. And hard for me to talk about because, again, I'm not an expert on writing. These are just things that I've picked up. But so writing sentences is a varied length. I talked about that a little bit. It just keeps your readers engaged. And then a sentence needs to express a complete thought. So you can't have just trailing off sentences or small sentences that mean nothing. So they all need a subject and they all need a predicate, and a subject, basically the star of the show, the main guy you're talking about or the main thing you're talking about. And then the predicate would describe something about it or the action it's taking. These are sources I like to use if I am not sure about what I'm writing, like for punctuation. These are both good. I really like this Purdue site. And then the Oatmeal has some funny comics on grammar and punctuation that I like. And that's it.
So I have to ask, are you the illustrator here, Sam?
I am.
Wow.
What?
Nice.
That's incredible.
Yeah, I kind of
Thank you.
Can you give a lunch and learn on that?
Drawing?
Yeah. Yeah.
We have
I think it's no.
We definitely hear good
What's that?
I say you've been holding out on us. No, we did not know that you were such a talented cartoonist. Wow.
Well, thank you. I just got an iPad, and so I've been practicing with it pretty much this entire week that I've been here. And so I decided to incorporate it into the Lunch and Learn.
It's pretty amazing.
Thank you.
Wow, that last slide is like.
That's awesome.
Do we have
If you don't tweet that, I'm gonna be mad.
All right, I will tweet this.
Really mad.
Is that do we have does our organizational chart have a director of cartoons?
We could pencil one in.
Ha.
My favorite slide was the one about I believe and I think and stuff. That is such a good style guide, writing style guide tip. But it especially applies to what we do, and almost all of our writing is very persuasive. It's like, hey, here's why you should use this. Staying away from I think and I believe is a really strong way of putting your foot down and saying, no, this is how it is. This is not just my belief. Like, I'm going to explain why.
Right.
That's awesome.
That's one that I've really tried to like keep in my thinking. That's one of the rules that I remember from like high school and writing in high school and stuff. Like, if you're writing about it, you believe in it. Show that you believe in it. Be confident about the message you're trying to send. And if you're wrong, someone will tell you.
Well, actually,
But yeah, anybody have any questions?
I like how on the Elicit Emotions one, it was only pain.
Yeah. I mean, that's the one I feel like is most prevalent to me. Like, if I feel pain about something, I want people to know what it is that I'm feeling if I have a solution, you know?
Yeah, for sure. And also, like, it was a very good point about not writing angrily, which I know that Jeffrey and I have both done now at some point, right?
that I have.
Yeah. There was something under general tips I think I had a question about. So with regard to read your work aloud, it's also good to read it backwards if you're looking for spelling specifically, or like extraneous words, which is a little weird, but it works. And with regard to sentence structure, like one thing that Will and I know have mentioned in comments and stuff is like if you break the thoughts apart, like you can kind of think of a sentence like code as being logically structured, but you can say, you know, this does this and this, you know, but it really should be this does this and it does this, or something like that. You know what I mean? Like you can kind of break like the first part of the sentence off, plug each second, you know, like each following clause in and see if it makes sense, and that will help you kind of like align it, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
I thought that on.
And in a scenario like that, that's when reading aloud at least helps me. Is if I'm like, this sentence looks weird, and then I read it, and then it just sounds weird, then yeah, that's normally when I catch those types of errors.
Word.
I think I'm still recording. I'm going to stop recording if nobody has any other questions.
Really awesome job.
Thank you.